The first time a teacher touched me in a way that made my stomach twist, it wasn't in class. It was in a coffee shop. At 2:17 p.m. And she smelled like vodka. Her name was Miss Ramirez. 24 years old, caramel hair that fell to her waist, heels that clicked like a movie soundtrack, and a smile that could have stopped traffic. To every guy at Lincoln Boys Academy in Chicago, she wasn't a teacher. She was a walking fantasy. And to me, she was suddenly digging her nails into my wrist, whispering, "Don't be such a baby," as she pulled me toward the door. I stayed silent. But that was the last time I ever stayed silent. Because silence was killing us. The crazy part is, if you asked anyone at Lincoln back then who the villain was, they wouldn't have said her. They would have said Ethan. Ethan was the one who went to the school board. He was the one who got her escorted out by security. And the next day, he became the most hated kid in the entire sophomore class. Not disliked. Not ignored. Hated. I still remember the cafeteria that Monday. The second Ethan walked in, forks clinked against trays, the whole room froze. That suffocating silence where you know everyone's thinking the same thing, this is the guy who ruined it for all of us. Then someone lobbed a chocolate milk carton across the room. It exploded against the side of his head. The place went wild. Ethan just wiped himself off, sat down alone, and opened his sandwich. No fight. No outburst. Just eating like nothing around him had shattered. And I hated him for it. I hated him because I didn't get it. My best friend Noah cornered me after gym class. "Stay away from Ethan," he warned. That jealous virgin made the whole thing up because she wouldn't give him attention. I believed him. We all did. It was easier than the truth. After that, Ethan wasn't just avoided, he was targeted. Someone spray-painted traitor across his locker. Juniors shoved him into walls between periods. Groups would sit around trading stories about Miss Ramirez like she was a celebrity they all shared. "Remember that white dress she wore? Now we're stuck with Mrs. Callahan, who looks like she came out of a retirement home." It became ritual. A Miss Ramirez story, then a glare at Ethan like he was the one who'd killed the dream. But here's what didn't make sense. Even as people tore him apart, Ethan kept showing up. He tutored 8th graders before school. He stayed late to help kids who couldn't pass algebra. He never snapped, never swung back, never even raised his voice. The closest he came was the day Chris Powell, our star running back, tried to start a fight behind the gym. Ethan's voice cracked when he said, "You don't know what she really was." Then he walked away. And I should have paid attention. I should have asked what he meant. But I didn't. Because then it happened to me. The email. Her name glowing in my inbox like a landmine. Miss Ramirez. She said she missed her special students. Said she wanted to see me. Even dropped her number. When I showed Noah and the guys at lunch, they erupted like I'd just been chosen for the NBA draft. "You're the lucky one, man," Noah grinned, slapping me on the back. "Don't mess this up for us." So I texted her. We agreed to meet downtown on a Saturday. When I saw her walk into the cafe on Wabash Avenue, it was like every fantasy came to life. She looked better than she ever had in class. She hugged me, and my brain short-circuited. She laughed at my jokes, brushed her hand against my arm, told me I looked so much older now. For 20 minutes, it was perfect. Then it turned terrifying. She suggested we head to her apartment. When I froze, she grabbed my hand hard, nails biting my skin, and tugged me toward the exit. "Come on, don't be such a baby." Her breath stank of alcohol. Her chest pressed against me. And all I wanted was to get out. That's when Ethan appeared. Out of nowhere. He ripped me out of her grip with this shaky but firm voice. "We're leaving. Now." He dragged me across the street to his mom's diner, sat me down, and eventually drove me home. He didn't ask for thanks. He didn't even look at me. I should have thanked him. I should have told everyone what happened. But instead, I told Noah. And Noah laughed. That cruel, sharp laugh that makes you wonder if he'd ever actually been your friend. You let Ethan block you? Bro, you're pathetic. By Monday, Noah's version was gospel. I was scared, and Ethan ruined it because he was jealous. When I tried explaining that she'd been aggressive, that she was scary, they laughed harder. Called me soft, gay, a little b*tch. Even the adults didn't care. I went to Principal Hayes. He didn't even look up from his screen. Miss Ramirez is no longer employed here. Don't stir up drama. That same afternoon, I saw 6 seniors pin Ethan against the wall near the gym doors. Spitting in his face, screaming about how he'd ruined another chance. And 2 days later, things went nuclear. But that wasn't the worst of it. Not even close. 2 days after Ethan pulled me out of that coffee shop, everything at Lincoln Boys Academy detonated. It started with a fake Grindr profile. Someone used Ethan's school picture, the stiff one with the grey background and awkward smile, and turned it into a weapon. Screenshots of explicit chats, doctored photos, things I can't even say out loud without wanting to throw up. By lunch, copies were everywhere. Taped inside bathroom stalls. Stuffed into locker vents. Even shoved under the windshield wipers in the parking lot. The worst part? Someone plastered them all over the windows of Ethan's mom's diner downtown. The same place he'd dragged me to for safety just days earlier. There was a video in our group chat of Ethan outside, tearing the photos down, crying, while people across the street just filmed and laughed. Nobody helped him. Not one person. I wish I could say I did. But I didn't. 3 days later, I finally showed up at his house. Boxes were stacked everywhere, like the family was evacuating before a storm. His mom answered the door with swollen eyes and just pointed me upstairs. Ethan was sitting on his bedroom floor, surrounded by piles of half-packed clothes. He looked at me and shook his head. "We're moving. My aunt's place in Colorado." Then he went quiet. So long I thought he'd fallen asleep sitting up. Finally, his voice cracked. I was 12 when she started. Miss Ramirez. She knew my parents were divorcing. She knew I was failing English. That's when she started messaging me. I felt my stomach lurch. 12. He showed me his laptop, screenshots of conversations with other boys too. Some from Lincoln. Some from nearby schools. She wasn't fired for one slip-up. She'd been doing this for years. Ethan had been the one collecting evidence. "She ruined me," he whispered. "My little sister won't even look at me because of what her classmates said. They call me disgusting. A liar. And all I was trying to do was stop her." He handed me a flash drive. His hand was shaking. "Give this to the police. Maybe they'll do something if it's not just my word." I sat in my car outside Ethan's house for 20 minutes, just staring at the flash drive in my palm. It felt heavier than any object I'd ever held in my life. Like it contained every secret our school wanted buried. That night, I made the mistake of texting Noah. "We need to talk." Ethan gave me something. He replied with a string of laughing emojis and then, "Did the freak try to convert you, too?" My stomach turned. I shoved my phone in my pocket and drove straight to the police station. Inside, the whole place smelled like old coffee and cigarettes. The desk sergeant barely looked up from his crossword when I explained. I slid the flash drive across the counter, telling him it was evidence against a teacher. He picked it up like it was a piece of trash, turned it over once, then slid it back. "The detective who handles those cases won't be back till Monday. File a report online if you want." And just like that, he went back to his crossword. I left the station in a daze. The flash drive felt like it was burning a hole in my jeans pocket. When I pulled into our driveway, my mom was already waiting on the porch. Arms crossed. That stance meant trouble. She didn't even let me out of the car before waving a paper at me. The school had emailed her. It said I was the problem. That I was harassing staff with wild accusations about a terminated teacher. It painted Ethan as a troubled student I was obsessively attaching myself to. My mom's voice shook as she read. The counselor is concerned about your inappropriate involvement with Ethan. She stared at me, waiting for an answer. And I panicked. So I lied. I told her it was all a misunderstanding. That I'd drop it. She studied my face for a long time, then finally went inside. Through the kitchen window, I saw her pick up the phone. She was calling the counselor, saying she'd monitor the situation. I couldn't breathe. My phone buzzed 3 times in a row. First, a meme page Noah had started about Ethan. Photoshopped images, captions calling him a predator. The kind of thing that spreads like wildfire. Second, a text from Ethan. Just 3 words. You okay? E. And the third made my blood run cold. It was from Miss Ramirez. Everything okay, sweetie? Red heart hash. My hands shook as I typed back. Yeah, just got home. The typing dots appeared instantly. Then vanished. Then reappeared. She was editing something long. Finally, her message arrived. She said she was worried about me hanging out with disturbed individuals. That some boys misinterpreted attention and projected their issues onto others. She hoped I wasn't letting myself be influenced. Reading it, I felt like my brain was being scrambled. Like she was already rewriting the story in real time. That night, my 13-year-old brother came into my room. He asked if it was true if I was obsessed with that teacher who got fired. His friends had told him. The look in his eyes cut deeper than anything Noah or the other guys had said. I muttered, "It's complicated." He rolled his eyes. Everything's complicated with you. Then he slammed the door. I locked mine. Plugged in Ethan's flash drive. Waited for my laptop to boot. And when the folders finally loaded, my heart stopped. One was labeled Others. Inside were screenshots. At least 3 different boys. And one name jumped out immediately, Daniel Lee. The kid who'd won the statewide science fair last spring. The conversation started just like mine had. Compliments about being special. Then escalating to secret meetups. And in that moment, the truth hit me like a truck. Ethan wasn't lying. None of us were safe. But here's the part that still keeps me up at night. While I was staring at those screenshots, one thought wouldn't leave my head. If I had walked out of that coffee shop with Miss Ramirez, if Ethan hadn't shown up when he did, my name could have been in that folder too. And that was just the beginning of her games. Because she wasn't done with me. Not even close. The next morning, I tried something desperate. I wanted proof. Something physical. The school kept digital entry logs for every teacher's key card. If I could show Miss Ramirez had been inside the building on days she swore she wasn't, it could blow everything open. Problem was, those logs required a parent's signature. So I sat in my room practicing my mom's cursive over and over, 50 times until my wrist cramped. When I finally thought it looked convincing, I drove to school early and slid the form across the counter. Mrs. Patterson, the secretary who'd known me since freshman year, held the paper up to the light. Her lips pursed. "This doesn't look like your mother's signature." My stomach dropped. "Do you really think you can forge documents?" She hissed, folding the form in half. "Your parents will hear about this." And just like that, I was back in the spotlight. Not as a victim. As a liar. My phone buzzed the second I walked outside. An unknown number. A woman's voice. "This is Mrs. Johnson. I'm a close friend of Miss Ramirez. I still have access to the grade book. You need to understand what kind of student you really are." Her tone was sugar mixed with poison. Problem students like you, she said, always try to blame others for their failures. But we keep records. Every missed assignment. Every failed test. Every note from counselors. It's all documented. The call ended before I could speak. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, the school building looming over me like it was watching. That night, Mom was waiting in the living room. Arms crossed. Tired eyes. Remember freshman year, she said softly, when you thought your English teacher was sabotaging you? But it turned out you just weren't turning in assignments. I stared at the floor. She sighed. I'm starting to wonder if this is the same thing all over again. Her voice wasn't angry. It was worse. It was exhausted. Later that night, I got tagged in something on Instagram. It was a story, local boy stalks innocent teacher after she rejects him. The caption made me sound like a predator. The comments poured in. He always stared at her in class. Knew he was creepy. Bet he made the whole thing up. People who'd never spoken to me suddenly had stories about how obsessed I was. It was like the narrative was being rewritten in real time, and I was powerless to stop it. The next day, I tried gathering witness statements. Teachers I trusted. Mr. Brooks, the history teacher who always gave me rides after debate tournaments, shook his head. Drop it before I have to call security. Miss Anderson said she'd be reporting my behavior to the principal. Even Mr. Garcia, the one teacher who'd ever felt like an ally, said, "Let it go, son. For your own good." The wall of silence was absolute. That night, Miss Ramirez made her next move. A new Instagram account popped up. Private at first. Then public. She started posting screenshots of emails I'd sent her last year asking for help with essays. Out of context, they looked obsessive. Desperate. One caption read, "Some boys just can't handle rejection, broken heart." It got hundreds of likes in minutes. I stared at my phone, feeling like the ground beneath me was dissolving. And then it got worse. I was trying to send Ethan a screenshot of the account as proof, but my finger slipped. I sent it to the group chat with Noah and the guys instead. I deleted it instantly, but Chris Powell had already screenshotted it. Too late, bro. Already saved. Within minutes, rumors spread I had evidence about Miss Ramirez. Which meant, according to them, that I was blackmailing her. By the end of the day, the story wasn't teacher preys on boys. It was a student tries to blackmail teacher. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the ceiling, remembering something I hadn't thought about in years. When I was 12, my cousin Jacob had this babysitter, 20, maybe 21. Blonde, college student, friendly in that fake way adults use with kids. One night, when Jacob had fallen asleep early, she sat too close to me on the couch. Asked if I thought she was pretty. I remember freezing. Saying nothing. She laughed, ruffled my hair, and called me sweet. I told no one. Not Jacob. Not my parents. Not anyone. Because deep down, I thought I'd done something wrong. That same heavy guilt sat in my chest now. Different face. Same sickness. By Friday, even my best friend from middle school, Marcus, bailed on me. His parents had heard rumors. They forbade him from hanging out with me. His scholarship depended on staying out of drama. Marcus looked genuinely sorry. But he still walked away. And with him went the last shred of normalcy I had left. Meanwhile, Miss Ramirez was only getting bolder. I saw her in the grocery store with Noah's mom. Smiling, touching her arm, offering tutoring for Noah's little brother. From behind the cereal aisle, I watched Noah's mom beam with gratitude, while Miss Ramirez whispered, glancing toward me with that sad, fake shake of her head. By the time they parted, Noah's mom was nodding sympathetically, even exchanging phone numbers with her. She was infecting every part of my life. Every connection. Every safe space. That weekend, I got an alert from our doorbell camera. At 3 a.m. a figure approached our porch. Miss Ramirez. She slid an envelope under the door, looked straight into the camera, smiled, then walked away. Inside the envelope was a letter, typed, professional, signed at the bottom with perfect penmanship. It said she was concerned about me, that she hoped my parents would get me the help I needed. To anyone else, it looked like compassion. Proof she was the caring teacher. But I knew what it really was. Evidence. Evidence against me. Because the camera also caught me watching her from my bedroom window. Another piece of proof for her story, that I was obsessed. I thought I'd already hit bottom. But Miss Ramirez was just getting started. And the next move she made would destroy what little I had left. The letter on our porch should have been my warning. But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. The official notice arrived in the mail on a Tuesday. Miss Ramirez was filing a restraining order against me. It felt like the floor disappeared beneath me. The court date was set for 2 weeks later. I'd have to face her again, this time in front of a judge. The grocery store was packed the Saturday before the hearing. My mom dragged me along to help carry bags. And that's when I saw her. Miss Ramirez, standing in the produce section, smiling and chatting with Noah's mom like they were old friends. I ducked behind a stack of oranges, but it was too late. She spotted me. Her eyes widened in mock surprise. She leaned closer to Noah's mom, hand on her arm, and whispered something while glancing my way. I couldn't hear her, but I didn't need to. Because I watched Noah's mom's expression shift from friendly to concerned. She pulled her younger son closer to her side. By the time they parted, she was nodding sympathetically, phone out, exchanging numbers with Miss Ramirez. She was turning my community into her army. The courtroom felt like another world. I sat in the waiting area, my cheap suit strangling me at the collar. My parents were behind me, radiating silent disappointment. Then she walked in. Miss Ramirez. Professional. Polished. Wearing a conservative dress, clutching tissues like she was the victim. Her lawyer, a sharp woman in her 50s, whispered to her, glaring at me like I was filth. When it was time, both sides told their story. I described the coffee shop. The grip on my wrist. The alcohol on her breath. My voice cracked as I told the judge I felt trapped. Her lawyer countered with a completely different narrative. A troubled 16-year-old with a history of instability. A boy who developed an unhealthy obsession. A young teacher who tried to help him only to be harassed after she refused his advances. The words sliced through me. Then came the evidence. Noah and Chris Powell had handed over months of our group chat. Messages of me joking about Miss Ramirez. Crude teenage boy humor. Stuff that had once just been locker room talk. Now, blown up on the courtroom screen, they looked like obsession. She's hot enough to die for. If I had the chance, I wouldn't say no. The judge's face shifted. Neutrality evaporated. Skepticism replaced it. Then Miss Ramirez took the stand. She dabbed at her eyes with tissues, voice quivering as she described feeling unsafe, followed, hounded by me. She even pulled up the text I'd sent her after that night. Yeah, I just got home. She claimed it was proof I was tracking her. Proof I was obsessed. The Instagram post of me at the police station was displayed next. She said it showed a pattern of stalking behavior. Every single interaction, reframed through her lens, made me look like a monster. The ruling came down like a hammer. My claims of assault? Dismissed as a fantasy. The restraining order? Granted. 500 feet. No contact. No third parties. Any violation would mean criminal charges. I sat there frozen while the judge scolded me about respecting boundaries and seeking appropriate help. I wanted to scream. To shake him. To ask how he couldn't see. But I didn't. I just stared at the floor. Afterward, my mom dragged me grocery shopping across town, far from anywhere Miss Ramirez might be. But even there, I overheard two moms talking. "Such a sweet young teacher," one whispered. "Volunteering her time for tutoring after being falsely accused." My younger brother later told me she'd given him candy after helping with math tutoring at his school. She was still recruiting. Still working. And nobody believed me. At 3 a.m. that night, my phone buzzed with a doorbell camera alert. I opened the footage, and my blood ran cold. Miss Ramirez. Walking up to our front porch. She slid another envelope under the door. Looked straight into the camera. Smiled. Then walked away. Inside the envelope was another letter. Polite. Professional. Saying she hoped my parents would get me the counseling I needed. To anyone else, it was evidence of her compassion. But to me? It was evidence against me. Because the camera also caught me watching her from my window. Another piece of her case. Another reason people would believe she was the victim and I was the obsessed kid. By the next week, things escalated again. A Pinterest board popped up, healing from false accusations. Miss Ramirez shared it. Other teachers commented their support. Parents reposted it. The story spread beyond Lincoln Academy. She wasn't just a teacher anymore, she was a symbol. A martyr for young educators destroyed by unstable students. And I was the villain in her legend. I thought the restraining order would be rock bottom. But it was just the floor collapsing beneath me. Because the closer the court case drew, the more the walls closed in. Friends gone. Teachers silent. My family doubting me. My reputation destroyed. And the worst part? I started doubting myself too. What if she was right? What if I was the problem? But then I'd see Ethan's face in my memory. Him sitting on the floor of his half-packed bedroom, telling me she started when he was 12. And I knew, whatever this cost me, I couldn't stop. I wasn't ready for the final blow she was about to deliver. Because Miss Ramirez still had one card left to play. One that would break me in ways I didn't know I could break. And she was saving it for the courtroom. The courthouse was packed the morning of the trial. Teachers. Parents. Students. Reporters. Everyone was here to watch me fall, or to watch Miss Ramirez reclaim her throne. I sat stiff in my cheap suit while my parents whispered behind me. They weren't comforting me. They were discussing how much this had already cost us. And then she walked in. Miss Ramirez. She looked destroyed, but in the perfect way. Pale makeup. A conservative navy dress. Tissue box in her hands before she'd even sat down. The broken young teacher image was flawless. And for a moment, even I almost believed it. The prosecution needed Ethan. Without him, everything was circumstantial. Screenshots. Rumors. My word against hers. So when he walked into the courtroom, thinner than before, hands trembling as he clutched a folder, my chest tightened. He sat in the witness chair and started from the beginning. 12, he said, voice barely above a whisper. She started messaging me when I was 12. He described how she complimented him, called him special, made him feel older than he was. He talked about her apartment, details only someone who'd been there could know. The Christmas ornament she kept up year-round. The framed photo of her ex-boyfriend she'd compared him to. Every detail was another knife in her perfect facade. The defense pounced. They tore into him about dates. About inconsistencies. About how trauma distorts memory. Ethan broke down twice. He asked for water. He asked for breaks. But every time, he came back. His voice shook, but he kept going. He showed the folder. Screenshots. Gifts she'd given him. Notes in her handwriting. He refused to let her win. Then something nobody expected happened. From the back of the courtroom, Noah stood up. His face pale, hands shaking. "I need to say something," he blurted out. The judge frowned, but Noah's parents nodded. And then he told the truth. That night months earlier, when I'd said Ethan had pulled me away from her, Noah admitted he'd followed me. "I didn't trust him," he said, pointing at me. I thought he was lying. He'd seen Ethan's car at Miss Ramirez's apartment complex. The same night she swore she wasn't there. The room went dead silent. Miss Ramirez's lawyer's face froze. And for the first time, her mask cracked. They called a recess. In the hallway, she cornered Ethan. I'll never forget her voice. It wasn't the quivering teacher's voice anymore. It was sharp, frantic, desperate. "You know what we had," she hissed. "You know it was real. Why are you lying about us?" Security had to drag her back before she touched him. But the jury had seen it. So had the judge. Back in court, the prosecution called in digital forensics experts. They pulled metadata from her social media posts. Photos she'd tagged in Chicago while claiming she was at conferences out of state. They even recovered deleted messages from her accounts, ones where she called Ethan "my man" and begged him not to tell anyone. Her lawyer tried to object, but the jury's faces said it all. The story was unraveling. When it was her turn to testify, she couldn't keep the mask on. She slipped. Again and again. Referring to Ethan as if they'd had a relationship. Talking about their connection. Smiling faintly when she described how mature he'd been for his age. The prosecutor just let her talk. And the jury saw it. The delusion. The sickness. Not a victim. A predator. After 3 days of deliberation, the verdict came back. Guilty. Sexual abuse of a minor. Abuse of trust. Required to register as a sex offender. 8 years in prison. Mandatory psychological treatment. Not the maximum sentence. But enough. Ethan collapsed into his mother's arms. I sat frozen. Relief mixed with something else, emptiness. Because even though she was going away, the damage she left behind wasn't disappearing. The fallout spread like wildfire. The school board held emergency meetings. Parents demanded answers. Administrators resigned. Teachers who'd stayed silent were investigated. Miss Ramirez's apartment was cleaned out by her parents. They found journals, pages about special bonds with multiple students. Other boys came forward. The tutoring center she'd started shut down within a week. Her teaching license was revoked permanently. The system that had once protected her was finally turning against her. But the damage to us? That didn't vanish. Ethan moved to Colorado with his family. He started intensive therapy. Slowly, he rebuilt his life. His little sister began talking to him again after understanding the truth. He texted me once, months later, "I'm breathing again." And that was enough. Me? I was left behind in Chicago. Some friends came back after the verdict. Others didn't. Marcus texted an apology. But our friendship wasn't the same. Trust doesn't regrow after it's been ripped out by the roots. Noah never spoke to me again. His parents forbade it. I didn't blame them. My college applications were late. Some schools rejected me outright. Others gave me a chance, but I ended up at a state school. Not my dream, but a clean slate. Still, the Google results will follow me forever. The obsessed student headlines don't just vanish. My family? We survived. Barely. The money for lawyers drained us. My brother had to endure years of whispers at school, "Your brother's the stalker." My parents don't bring it up at dinner anymore. But the scars sit there, between every silence. Years later, I saw her again. Not in Chicago. Not in court. At a gas station off the interstate in Indiana. She didn't recognize me at first. But when she did, her face crumpled. She looked smaller. older, tired. The manic energy was gone, replaced with a dullness. Medication, maybe. We didn't speak. I paid for my gas and drove away. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear. Or anger. Or even hate. Just sadness. For the wreckage she'd left behind. 5 years after her sentencing, I got one final message. It was from Ethan. Just 2 words. Thank you. I stared at them for an hour. Remembering the terrified boy in his bedroom surrounded by moving boxes, handing me that flash drive. Those 2 words carried the weight of everything we'd survived. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just deleted the flash drive. Pretended it never existed. Saved myself and my family from all of it. But then I remember Ethan at 12. And I know, there was never really a choice. Doing the right thing doesn't mean you win. It means you survive. And I survived.